Hello, welcome to this class. And in this class we'll be talking about conditionals, the if statements, and the else statements. So I think else if, or if else statements actually. So we'll be talking about them briefly in this class, and I'll try to make it as fast as possible. So let's just get into business. Conditionals. I know in our previous class we talked about comparison operators, and this is where these operators becomes very would I say useful. They get very useful when we're using them with the if and else statements. And let's just get into business. So before we go, let me just itemize what we'll be discussing. So we'll be discussing in this class on conditionals. Okay, we'll be discussing the if statements, we'll probably be talking about the else statements, and finally the else if, and finally the else if statements. So let's get started with the if statements. The conditionals, or the if statements, runs a block of code if certain conditions are met. That is, if it checks to see the block of code within the if, or what's called the if block, would run if certain conditions are right, and it would not run if those conditions do not correlate. Just let me put a scenario. Like, let's say you send a kid to the market, or a child, or maybe an adult. You send your friend to the market, and you say, if you get to the when you get to the market, if there are oranges, buy 5, and if there are no oranges, buy banana instead. So basically that's what an if statement does. So in this case, you're like, when you get to the market, if oranges, if you see oranges, you buy 5 oranges. But if there are no oranges, that's where there's else buy bananas. So basically that is the before the verbal explanation of what an if statement actually is. So the syntax is very simple for an if statement. It's just using the if word, then in a bracket, what we call, then you write the condition. This is just let me just even, this shouldn't run. Let me just put it in a comment. So basically this is the condition that you are going to give your if statement, and if this condition correlates, then whatever is inside this okay, let me extend this comment. So here's what I'm trying to explain to you. Okay, so this is it. So if then your condition, let's say if your condition turns out true, then here what's in this curly braces, this block of code would run. But if your condition is not true or turns to false, this block of code would not run. That is basically the if syntax, or how it is declared. So for instance, let's say we have let's say we want to build a calculator, for instance, and we're going to have a value or two values, then the operand or operator, the operands and the operator. So for instance, now we have, so we're going to declare variable 1. Let variable 1 equals let's just leave it, let's just declare them empty. Then let's variable 2, it's empty also. Then let's assign. So basically these are what we need for our calculator, these three variables. Then so we can now add values to them. We could say variable 1 equal 23, then variable 2 equals 27, then our sign equal plus. So now how do we build, let's make it a string, our calculator, or with the conditional. So we could come and say if, then inside our conditional block we say if sign, remember that our conditional operators we talked about, equal equals, then equal plus. Then what we're saying is if the sign equals plus, what should we do? We should now add results equals value 1, variable 1 plus variable 2, and we have just created our first additional how do I call it, additional so sorry, I'm supposed to put let here, that result equals this, and this will now act as a local variable. So we can now say console log results, and if we check our console, our result here is 50. So we can do multiple things here. We can now check, let's say for instance we want to also do something for multiplication, so we would go just copy this. I don't want to type so much, so just paste if sign equals minus, then you do, you perform a minus here. And if you notice, let's change this to minus. You will notice that the first block of if will not run because the conditions are now changed. It is this second block of if that will run. So let's see. Let's save and go. And we have -4. So basically we are already building our calculator already, and you could put other conditions. If this is the sign is divide, let it divide. If it's modulus, let it perform the function of modulus, and what have you. So basically this is where an if statement shines brighter. And if you notice, we add two if statements, but we could make this whole thing into one by using the else statement. We didn't talk about it yet. The else statement, which is let me just describe how it is done. Here you just put an else, then you put what we run if this. So what it is if the if condition is true, this block of code will run, right? If it's not true, this block of code will not run. So whatever is here will now run. That is how an if else statement works. So now let's convert this our two if statements and turn it so that it will be able to handle both addition and subtraction without putting two blocks of if. So we could just come here and say else. So we put we just come and say I want to cut everything here and just put it here. So we don't need to have two if blocks anymore. So we just save. So now if what we're saying is if the sign is plus, let result equals this multiplied by this plus this, and we'll give you the result here and console it out. But if it is not, which is this case now because it's not plus, this block of code will run. And let's just try it. Change it to plus and see. We have 50. Then we come and we do this. We refresh and we have -4. So that is basically the if and else statement. So you can see if this is true, do this. If it's not, then do this part of the code. So there is also what we call the else if block. The else if block works like this. So like in our case now, we're trying to write a calculator. So what if it's not plus and want to check if it is let's say divide or multiplication? What would we now? We can't use another else. We have to go and write another if statement, then put else. Is that the way out? No. What comes in here is now what we have we call the else if block. So the else if block is like this. So say else if, and we are now able to put another condition like this. And the good thing with else if blocks, we can have as many else if blocks as possible. So say you can say else if, you can now, let me just copy this, So we can now say if sign equals negative. So we are now testing for negative. Then if it's negative, we could now say copy this. I'll just paste it here. Then so if it's positive, this block of code runs. If it's negative, this block of code runs. Then so if it's not negative, we'll just assume it is a multiplication. So this becomes this. We're just assuming. So now in this case, let's see if our code still runs. You see, it still ran correctly because we said it is a negative, so it checked if sign is equals to positive, it goes, let's check it's not positive, so it didn't run that, and say else if it's negative, then it now ran this place and give us the result. So let's so you can see how you can actually change an if, an else if, and else statement. So in the case where we change sign to, let's say, multiplication, so we already told it, so it will check if sign equals plus, the sign is not plus, it will not run. It will also come here and check if sign equals minus, it's not minus, it will not run this block of code either, and finally just run this. And if we go and refresh our browser, you see we have a multiplication happen there and we have 621. So maybe in your own leisure time, you can play with this if else statement, and you can add as more else if. Like you could come and say, let me just copy this and okay, copy this else if block, Ctrl C, and I would like to put it here. So let me, so that you'll be able to see what's happening. So I copied this else if, and let's say we put a multiplication sign here so that this becomes multiplication. So we'll just change this to divide, to division, so that in case if it's not multiplication, so what we are saying is if the sign is addition, you add. If it's division, else if it is subtraction, you subtract. Else if again, if it's multiplication, you multiply. And if it's not addition or subtraction or multiplication, then just divide. That is what this else is standing here for. And we can now see if we put okay, let's leave it like this, and you see it is this block of code that has this sign that would run, and we'll still have the same answer as we had before. So let me refresh. See, we're still having the same answer. So you can actually chain as much else if and else if and else if, then have only one else, and you can only have one if here in this case. So basically these are this is conditionals for you. I would advise you play with this a little bit more so that you get a more grounded understanding. And I did something here that I don't want to forget to mention. I kept declaring the result, the same variable results, let result, and this is because inside of here it's called a local scope. So you can actually, this results is local to this block of code. If you go outside of it, you will not have results does not exceed outside. It's not global. That's why I'm declaring it locally in each of these code blocks. So maybe in the next class I'll discuss more about. Okay, let's just talk about it. We talk the difference between the var and the let's method of declaring variables is because the var method is global, it's not scoped, while the let method is scoped. So when you declare an element with declare a variable with let, and it's within a code block, something like this to this, whatever variable you declare is only present within this block. Outside of it, it is not. You can't access it. So, but if it was declared with the var keyword, it's global, like you can access it anywhere outside and inside. So that's why it has a difference between the var and the let, and using the let in this case helps you to know, like you can see, you know that this is different from this and it's different from this because they are in different scope entirely, and it helps you manage and control your code very well. Like I said in the beginning of the opening classes, I think I mentioned it, that let came with ES6 or ECMA 5 in 2015, I think 2015 or 2005. I'm confusing both, but it came with the latest version of JavaScript, and it makes your code a little bit less prone to errors. That's why that is there. So I'd like to end this class here. I don't want to drag it for too long. In the next class, I know I kept mentioning we'll go to functions, but I think in the next class we are ready to talk about functions and proceed from there. So I hope you would practice this and play with conditionals a lot more, so that you'll be able to have a solid background on them before you step into the next class. Thank you, and have a blessed day. Thank you for pulling to the end of this class.